Hi guys and welcome to launch day at the Wobbly Geek. We are going to be looking at a semi-regular series that we're going to be doing here on the channel known as the Wobbly Hall of Fame. It's going to cover the likes of movies, TV, comic books, all the things that we love, but it's got to be the creme de la creme here. These are the things that are universally loved either personally by me or by you guys out there. We're going to gush about why we love it, but we're also going to look at a semi-critical stance on why people have certain different opinions on these bits of media and look at whether these criticisms are valid. Now, our first case in point is going to be the Martin Scorsese 1990 classic, Goodfellas. Now, this is not the film that Martin Scorsese won his directing Oscar for. That was The Departed back in the mid-2000s. Now, for me, that's absolutely wrong. This was Scorsese's best work, and he's regularly referenced as one of the greatest films of all time. However, the only award he actually won was Best Supporting Actor for Joe Pesci. Now, we all know that the Academy is a bit shy when it comes to awarding films that have got either nudity, violence, or swearing. This had all of it. So back in the 90s, this was never going to win your Best Pictures or your Best Directors simply because of its content and how it was viewed by the Academy at the time. But as we're finding, these sorts of films are being reappraised later on. They regularly appear in the greatest films of all time. Look at the likes of Your Godfather Part 1 and Part 2. You look at Pulp Fiction. You look at all those sorts of what would be deemed gritty films being reappraised. Your Clockwork Oranges, Taxi Driver, all that sort of thing. But today we're going to try and break down Goodfellas and what was great and what could have been improved. Now, your opening shot is a speeding title credit. A lot of it is very fast, and it's to a soundtrack of a car racing down a road. Now that will be revealed later on after the title credits, but it's constantly off balance and using different layers of colour with the credits to make you feel off balance, like you're racing around, and that's a general theme that's set out throughout the film. This is something that goes at pace. You jump from era to era all the time and you are constantly off balance with these characters. So I think it's absolutely fitting to have that sort of opening. Now, as your opening credits stop, you then see our three characters. There's your main protagonist, Henry Hill, played by Ray Liotta. There is your other two supporting characters in Tommy, played by Joe Pesci, and by Jimmy, played by Robert De Niro. Now, these two guys absolutely help Liotta blossom. This is not a solo piece. As much as it tries to portray itself as a character study into one character, the whole piece goes around the ensemble. You need to look at how these characters all interact with each other and how these communications can be true or misleading. You do have a lot of misleading narrators here, because I will go into that later when they speak in a monologue form and speak their thoughts to camera instead of actually speaking them in terms of verbiage. But right for now, we are looking at these three guys going down a road at speed, hitting a speed bump, and then hearing a strange noise. And the first thing you hear is Jimmy go, "Oh God." And then we hear the noise again as we hit another speed bump. And then Tommy goes, "It can't be." The guys then stop, pull up the car, open the boot, and there is a mangled and bloody body. We later find out that this is a fellow gangster known as Billy Batts, and his story will be told further down the line. But as they look at the man and know that he's barely breathing and full of blood, they essentially go, "Right, I can't believe it." And then Tommy comes up with a butcher's knife and stabs him repeatedly while Jimmy shoots him again in the head to ensure that he's absolutely dead. Now, for me, this is a really important establishing shot of the three characters, because throughout this you will see a far more charming and gentlemanly, friendly three characters. But you must always remember who they are. This opening shot establishes exactly who they are, all three of them. Even though Henry doesn't participate in any of the actual murder of the character, you've got to understand that he is absolutely capable of doing this. Violence is something that has been in his life since he was small. And all the story is going to be told through his eyes, explaining his friends, his motivations, but then later on looking at how those interactions affect others and affect other people in his life, and those supporting characters will then monologue their feelings. A lot of this is about seduction versus reality. And the next following shot from this and start of the monologue is from Henry himself, saying that ever since he was a kid, all he ever wanted to be was gangster. Now from this we get a shot of a young Henry Hill, probably around 9-10 years old, and we start the first bit of glamour, of seduction, of the mob life. He sees all these guys, and he monologues about it throughout, basically being able to do as they please, what they want. They're all in the nicest cars, wearing the nicest suits, playing cards in the middle of the night when it's illegal too, parking in fire hydrants, such small minor stuff but really impactful for a 9-10-year-old to see this absolute disregard for the law and the fact that there's no impact to them. It becomes so intoxicating and glamorous because he knows what the rules are, because his parents have set down the rules, but he's also seen that people outside his window basically disregard the rules and get away with it, and no one bats an eyelid. For that reason, he's very intoxicated to looking at these people as his role models. He looks at his father, hard-working Irishman, who has a regular job but can't afford to look after his family. There's 7 of them living in such a small house. One of the children is disabled and can't get the treatment that he needs. So when he looks and sees his father playing by the rules and not getting the reward versus these guys who can get all these sorts of money with no regard for the rules whatsoever, it's absolutely intoxicating for this kid. It's like, how can I be part of that? How am I going to get my piece of that? Now, the first thing that's made clear is that Henry's mother is Italian, which means that he does have a way in to the mob. Even though his father's half Irish, he does have a way in. And he uses that to his advantage. He goes to where they hang out, the cab stand, and he starts doing sort of your regular, or what you would assume to be regular, sort of part-time job. But it's not a regular job. It's not like he's taking bookings for the cab stand. He's running bets. He's doing errands for the mobsters and getting well paid for it. You know, so much so that Henry himself says that to him, his parents viewed this as a part-time job, something to stop him being lazy, his father said. But he always viewed it as a full-time job, an opportunity to get out, to do better. And this was going to be his life because he wanted the money, he wanted the prestige and everything that came with it. So we then go through Henry's early days, taking messages for the higher gangsters, moving Cadillacs when they get parked up. You know, stuff that a normal 9-10-year-old shouldn't be doing. And in fairness, the pull and the persuasion here is the fact that Henry can do these things that no other kid can do. And he's finding that within that, his life is changing. He gets way more than, the other kids in the neighbourhood. He's earning more than the adults in the neighbourhood just for parking cars and doing these really minor sort of errands. And, he slowly gets inducted into this way of life. Now, at some point, he does get some intervention from the school system, because he stops going to school. It's not important to him anymore because, why would it be when he can earn all this money and not have to sit through things that he would find boring and, just generally not infusing. He gets a letter from school that goes to his dad. His dad then confronts him about not going to school, and to be honest, it's a graphic bit of domestic violence and child violence that wouldn't be allowed today. But the monologue itself is actually quite interesting because Henry himself says, I didn't care about the beatings, I was used to the beatings, and the way I saw it, my life in that cab stand was way more important than any beating my dad could give me, so I just took them. And just every now and again knew I'd have to take a beating for it. Now, the next scene following that is then Henry, with some of the guys from the cab stand, picking out the mailman. And this is another classic bit of persuasion and glamour and things that would be so hyper intoxicating to a 10-year-old. He gets to pick out the guy, say, he's the one that delivers letters to my house from school. And the gangsters pick him up and threaten to throw him in the pizza oven. And there's absolutely no consequence for this, apart from Henry gets what he wants. The letters from school stop. He even makes a joke that his mum doesn't get any letters anymore because the postman's that scared. And he says, how can I go back to school after learning that I can have this power? And these people will look after me. They're my friends. They're my family. If I tell them I've got a problem, they just fix it. And all they want me to do is do things I want to do anyway. Now, the next scene is, again, it's all establishing at the minute the persuasive and the glamorous side of being in mobster life. Now, I think this is a real effort from Scorsese. A lot of people criticise him for glamorising and antisocial life, violent life, exorbitant life. I actually don't think he does that. I think he wants, because we don't have a protagonist who is a audience surrogate. None of us are Henry Hill. None of us are Jordan Belfort from the Wolf of Wall Street. We're not going to be these people. We're not going to take these choices. So he has to visually show the trappings and the seductive quality of the trappings to help the audience understand what the character is going through. Now, these monologues to self, a lot of film school critics will say that is the most lazy way to get a character to describe their feelings and how they react to things. Usually, you want your actors to deliver that performance physically and verbally through speech. Now, I disagree here. Because Scorsese does it so masterfully, but it's also fitting for the picture, because a lot of these people are duplicitous throughout the film. All they can do is lie. They lie to each other all the time, because when push comes to shove, the only person they actually care about is them. You've got to be absolutely clear about that. So most of the time when the characters are speaking, either to themselves or to each other, they are lying. So these internal monologues are a moment of truth, even though in some cases, it's a false narrator throughout. These are misremembered things or things to make the protagonist look in the best possible light. No one is the villain in their own story, so you're never going to get the absolute truth from anybody, but all they can describe is what they think and what they feel. And Scorsese does this at all times, just so the audience has some sort of idea of what the character was thinking internally, even though the speech and the actions can sometimes be opposite to that. And I think it's so important when he's describing the seduction versus the reality. You need to understand why characters have made certain choices, and they will tell you through these internal monologues. Now, in the next scene, Henry is introduced to Jimmy, who is massively played by Robert De Niro. He is the most charming, friendly guy in the world. And Henry describes him as famous, through abhorrent acts. They said, he was doing mob hits for bosses at 16 because killing people didn't bother Jimmy. It was business. Now that's not something to be proud of in a normal situation, but in the life that these people live, this is absolutely wonderful. The fact that the guy is willing to do anything for the organisation as long as it serves his own purposes, I think that's important in understanding who Jimmy is. And the next bit is how generous he is with people. The monologue goes that he was giving out hundreds to the bartender just to keep the ice cold, and giving gifts to everyone, even to Henry, as he's introduced by Paulie, the captain of the organisation. Now, Paulie is a very interesting character. He's described as somebody who moves slow because he didn't have to move at any other pace. He had that much respect that even though you knew he moved slow, you knew he was a vicious, respected character, and you did not cross him. And as this introduction happens, and Henry's given a couple of $100 just for giving Jimmy a drink, the friendship is set. And then we move on to Jimmy introducing Henry to Tommy. Now, in the beginning, what they're doing is selling cigarettes. And they're doing this out of the back of a truck, and it's a fairly innocuous scene. It's just this truck parked by the roadside and some workers outside giving their orders, and Tommy and Henry giving out the cigarettes as requested. Now then, two police officers come by and say, "What are you doing? Why are you doing this here? Where did you get permission from, your mother?" And they take Henry away. To this, Tommy then runs upstairs and says, "Henry's been pinched. What do we do?" Switch to the very next scene, and Henry's up in court with a mafia lawyer who then all but gives the judge a smile, and the next thing we know, Henry is walking out of the courthouse free as a bird. Now he at this point thinks that he's going to be in massive trouble for getting what they call pinched. Now what actually happens is Jimmy goes and grabs him and hugs him and says, "Happy graduation." Now confused at this, Henry goes, "Why? I got pinched. We're not supposed to do that. Why would you congratulate me?" And all he said is, "You did it like a man. This is our mantra. Never rat on your friends and never tell the police anything." And he then hands him some money. And as Henry goes up the courtroom steps, he finds the rest of the organisation all there waiting for him like a graduation party. Oh, my boy, you did it. Here's some more money. Congratulations, you popped your cherry. This is seen as a rite of passage to go through a criminal process and to come out of it without any consequences. The only thing the organisation asks for is loyalty to the organisation. You always keep your mouth shut and you never ever tell on your friends, meaning the organisation. That is something that Henry must live by at all times. Then we jump forward to around 1966 at New York's Idlewild Airport, and we stand with a grown-up Henry Hill, who is played immaculately by Ray Liotta. Now, I think one of the things that really, really does his character justice is his physical presence and his attractiveness on screen. The way he looks at other women, the way they react to him, it all works. This young guy who has these real piercing blue eyes and can charm and do everything you'd ever want. He's essentially got the world at the ball of his feet. At 21, he's supposed to be 21 at this point, and he explains how regular day-to-day operations go for the organisation. With them being close to the airport, they rob the airport regularly. They've got friends, they've got family, they've got cousins who work at the airport at all sorts of different levels, from security to trucking to general operations, all this stuff. They've got somebody in place at every single level so that they know when good things are coming in and when's the perfect time to steal them. Henry describes it as being better than Citibank. It's so regular. It's like going to a cash machine to these people because they know they've got everything locked down. Everybody's in on the action, everybody's being paid, and everybody does as they are told. Now, the next thing we go on to is a robbery called France Air. We get a cousin of Henry's coming up to him and to Jimmy, going, look, I've got an amazing score, couple of $1 million. All you have to do is come in and pretend it's lost luggage. And they both look at him and go, it can't be that easy. It's never that easy. He went, it is this time because it's a holiday. They won't find out till Tuesday and I'm the security. I can get you the key. And all you have to do is come in there looking like you're going for lost luggage. And there's 2 million waiting for you. And that's exactly how it happens. And you know, the first thing Henry talks about is the important thing is that we give Paulie his tribute. Just like we did in the old country for protection. And it's actually a theme throughout. He says people don't understand how the mafia works. Or the way they convince themselves is that they are essentially security. They are policemen for people who are too afraid to go to the police. Now, the actual reason for that is obviously because their activities are illegal. But the way they see it is that they're discriminated on from the beginning. So they have to protect their own. The Italians have to protect their own, and this is how they do it. The mafia are their enforcers, their protection from everything. Now, as we go on to the next scene, this is absolutely iconic. And the bit of trivia we have for this is it was completely unscripted. This wasn't even told to Ray Liotta. He sort of had this blind while Scorsese just recorded a cold reaction. And this is where you see Pesci's genius. He's telling a story about being arrested and being in the middle of nowhere. And Henry basically says, oh my God, such a funny story as he roars out laughing. It's uncontrollable. He can't stop himself from laughing. And then Pesci goes stone quiet and completely flips. And it's as deadpan and as serious and as intimidating a performance as you will ever see. And he goes, what am I? Am I a joke to you? Am I a clown? Am I here to make you laugh? Am I here because I'm funny? Am I a joke to you? And you just see Liotta's face drop in horror. And he goes, no, I don't know what you mean. You know, I didn't mean it. And you know, the other guys are sort of trying to defend Henry here and go, look, he's a kid, he didn't know what he was saying, you know, it was a joke. And, you know, Pesci just completely dismisses these guys and goes, no, he's a big boy, he knows what he's saying. What were you saying? How am I funny? What the fuck is so funny about me? Please, tell me what's funny about me. And as the audience, you can feel for Henry because you don't know whether this guy's going to shoot. And then he bursts out laughing and goes, you know, I really got you there, Henry. You nearly crumbled. Yeah, I don't think you'd survive police questioning here. And laughter roars out. And you think that's the end of the tension. And you think that's as vicious as the character of Tommy gets. But it's not. It's absolutely not. Because in the next second, a guy from the back of him goes and taps him on the shoulder and says, the waiter was scared to talk to you, but I need to talk to you about the bill. And he says, you know, just put it on my tab, it's fine. And he says, no, that's what I wanted to talk to you about. You know, it's $7,000 you owe me, this is not peanuts. And he sort of looks around and goes, wait, you're calling me a deadbeat in front of my friends? You come in here to embarrass me? What do you think you're doing? You know, how dare you call me a bum? Do you know how much money we spend in here? And he grabs a glass from the table and smashes the guy over the head. And the guy just burst out laughing. It's like, oh, this is just what Tommy does, you know. It's a standard Tommy thing. And you sort of, the veneer cracks. It's not that he's a funny guy or he's just trying to be intimidating. This guy is brutal. If he takes offence to anything you're saying, you can end up dead. You know, a second patron comes up to try and calm the situation down. He cracks him over the head too, and then makes a joke about, you know, the week before the guy had asked him to christen his kid, and it's going to be $7,000 for him to christen it now, you know. And following on from that, the owner of the restaurant goes to Paulie, the leader, and says, you know, I can't deal with this guy. He's bought into this place, but he's a wild card, and I'm frightened for my life. I think he's going to kill me. You know, and I need some help. I need some protection. And it's clear that Henry sort of set up this meeting with him and Paulie, and Paulie sort of acts, this is part of the con. Paulie acts disinterested. You know, what do I know about the restaurant business? So the only thing I know is how to order. I don't know how to run a restaurant, and it gets to the point where the guy's giving it away. You know, I just want your help. Be in here, be half. You know, help me get protection. And then Henry describes the con. The con is, yes, you've got Paulie in for protection. You don't have to deal with Tommy anymore, but you have to pay Paulie every week. And what he's going to do is he's going to run up bills on your credit, bankrupt the business, and then set it ablaze. Which is exactly what happens. That's exactly how it all works out. And even as the restaurant's then on fire, Tommy and Henry are talking about a date that they're going on, between Tommy's wanting to bed this young Jewish girl, and she's got a friend, and Henry has to go because they don't trust she doesn't trust going out with Italians. So Henry's not really interested. But if you actually think of the backdrop, they're burning somebody's business here. They've extorted everything, and it's so mundane for them. It's so ordinary that they're talking about a date they're going on the following day. And it's a complete disconnect from normal world to the world that we're inhabiting for this film. And they discuss going on this date, and Henry's clearly not interested. He says he's got business dealings the next day and really, really doesn't want to do this, even if it's, a favour for his friend. But Tommy puts enough pressure on to make the date happen. Now, what Henry doesn't know is he's just about to meet his wife, Karen. Now, they both say in their own monologues that they were uninterested. They both looked uninterested in each other. They both weren't happy with the situation. Henry was ignoring Karen, and Henry needed to get away because he had business and wasn't particularly interested in this woman. But the dynamic changes so quickly from this first date. Tommy somehow convinces Henry to go on a second date with the four of them. But Henry no-shows. And this is where you see the dynamic turn. Instead of crying and feeling humiliated, Karen asks Tommy to go find Henry. And this is where the attraction starts, because she's a woman he can't control. He's so used to controlling the women and the people around him that they're almost discardable, but she's going to make him notice her. She's different, and to be honest, that's the first attraction for him. The first time he really looks at her, really notices her, is when they're in the street and she's screaming at him, "Who do you think you are standing me up, Frankie Valli?" And she's throwing things at him, and he's so abusive and so toxic. But Henry loves it. He loves the fact that she's not his usual type. She's not easy. She's not just going to lay down and take whatever scraps he gives her. And then they go on the second date. And again, when I talk about persuasion and reality, this establishing shot, this steady cam shot, is so important in the seduction of Karen, and the way she describes it is absolute perfection. Lorraine Baracco was perfectly cast as Karen. The way she can eloquate her feelings, her emotions all the way through this is absolutely pure entertainment. It's mesmerising. The way she describes going through the restaurant as the Steadicam pans around this restaurant and all the things that me and you wouldn't be able to do. He leaves his car out with the valet. Even though there's no valet parking, this guy will look after it because he's just paid him $200. They're not queuing. They're going through a back entrance which is already open and ready for him. There's somebody outside waiting with his hand out for a tip. They go through the kitchen, they see the maitre d's, and everything's so special. And as he walks through, the owner picks Henry out and says, "Don't worry, sir, I've got you a table right out front." And the table moves and sits right out front while you've got customers complaining that they can't get a table and they've been waiting for hours. It doesn't matter. But it's all about making Karen feel special. She is, for that moment, the most important thing in the universe. And he's going to show off his wealth, his attraction, his connection, everything about him. Every sort of peacocky moment for Henry is right here. Everything he can do for her is right here. And she asks him what he does. And he says that he's in construction. And she feels his hands and says, these don't feel like construction hands. And he just playfully goes off, well, I'm a union delegate. Now it's almost like she knows he's lying. She already knows that he's not being truthful with her. But she accepts the lie because the trappings and the peacocking and all this date are just so intoxicating for her and so attractive that she can't stop herself. She knows she's fallen for him right then and there, just through that. Just because, as she describes it, he's got so many things at such a young age at 21, but he handles it so well. He's got a swagger, a sexual confidence that she hasn't seen in other men, but she sees in him. And then on the second date, they go to see her mother, and quickly he needs to hide a cross that he's wearing around his neck because Karen's lied to her parents and said that he's half Jewish. And again, you see the opulence, you see them out in a car in a starry night, and you see them fall in love. You see the attraction, you see where this is all going. And she says how dreamy her life is with him, how idyllic. And to be honest, later on we know it's all a facade. Henry loves the chase. That's what he loves. He doesn't love people. People are objects to him. They're things to be bought. They're relationships to be had. And he can manipulate people with his power, with his money, with his friends. He does love Karen, but she's an object. She's his object. And then we go on to the marriage scene, where you see everybody sort of saying about it's good that they're settling down, and this big show of wealth with people lining up and having envelopes full of cash given to them. And Karen goes, for a split moment, I've left the money, what do I do? And Henry just goes, no one will rob you here. And, as she talks about being introduced to all these mobsters and their families, I think she says, all the nephews and cousins are called Peter and Paul. And she says, by the time I'm finished meeting everybody, I feel drunk because he's got two lives. He's got two families. He's got his actual family, who play very little part no part in this after the scenes of him being 8 to 10. But his other family, the one he considers his family, there's so many of them and they're all so nice to each other and well connected. Now what I would say is that it's all facade with these people. They say pleasantries to each other, they say that they're friends, but you've got to realise that at all times you are being watched, you are being judged, and you could potentially be being killed. It's all about self-preservation and self-awareness. But for this honeymoon phase, and it is a honeymoon phase for the film where all the sort of romanticising of the mobster life, it's all about the charm and what can this life give you, what can these people give you, how convincing are these people that they are good people. Karen says that she convinced herself that her husband just goes out to earn a couple of extras. She doesn't question how he does it. She even knows the FBI are at the door every other day. But for her, he's just a blue-collar guy. He's just somebody going out trucking or going and doing hard labour. But he cuts a few corners to get extras. What he does is not cutting corners. It's life and death situations. He's robbing. He's stealing. He's, intimidating others. He's doing all sorts of illegal things that she completely whitewashes because it fits her narrative of this wonderful, charming gorgeous guy that she absolutely loves. Another key scene with this is also when Henry goes to a holiday club which her parents own, and a friend of hers comes up and introduces himself. Now, while Jimmy and Henry are out on a job extorting some money from an associate of theirs who has a gambling issue and owes them some money, and this guy is really getting beaten on. He gets a phone call at the guy's shop on an online, and it's Karen. The guy from the holiday club that she knew has tried to sexually assault her, and she's horrified and she's crying, and Henry is so angry, so protective of his woman, his property. How dare you try and do that? And he goes over and he gets her like a shining knight and protects her from everything and gets her inside the house. Now the guy lives across the road from Karen, so then Henry goes over there, and the guy is all bravado and goes, "Do you want some of this?" And Henry just goes, gets his gun. With the butt of the gun, he beats the guy to a bloody mess. And the friends who are behind him soon scare off. The next minute he goes over to Karen and says, "Hide this." Now the important part here is Karen's reaction, because she says in her monologue most of her friends would have run the minute their boyfriends handed them a gun. Karen didn't, because she's honest about it. She can whitewash all this, because to her the threat, the violence, the intimidation and the sexual attraction all add up to more, and it just turned her on. So she completely knows what she's getting in terms of Henry. The veneer's starting to slip, but she doesn't care. She understands what he does, she understands the lifestyle, but as long as it doesn't affect her personally, she's fine with it, because it turns her on. And that is so important when understanding the toxicity of Karen and Henry and why they lasted so long. Because they are so codependent, they are so intertwined with each other, they need each other. Henry goes off and cheats with numerous women throughout the film, but he always sticks with Karen. Karen is his anchor. I believe in his warped mind, he thinks he loves her. Now, in my personal opinion, I think he loves her like an object. It's not a mutual partnership. He gives the money, he gives her what she wants, and in exchange, she turns a blind eye. Now, I think she's completely complicit in that, because she knows who he is, she knows what he does, and she knows what he's capable of. But again, as long as it doesn't affect her, she's fine. Now then we move on to 1970. Now I think this is where the film really starts to change, and where you start looking into a second act where things start to fall apart. And we go back to the first scene that we're introduced, where I said about Billy Bats. Now the guys are all drinking in a bar that Henry owns, and Billy Bats is recently out of prison and celebrating with some of his friends. And in comes Tommy with a girl, and he's had a bit to drink. It turns out that Billy and Tommy have a bit of a history from when Tommy was younger. Tommy used to shine Billy's shoes for pocket money. So when Billy's trying to bring this up as a joke, as a way to demean and intimidate Tommy's more violent and fiery side comes out almost immediately. He says, "I don't do effing shines anymore, Billy." And then to that Billy responds, "Go get your effing shine box and shine my shoes." And Tommy just flips. Now he walks off with the girl, not to be seen again until the next scene, but we can presume this is hours later. The next thing we know, Tommy's bursting through the door. He slams Billy across the head, while Jimmy and Henry start booting the guy in to an absolute pulp. They get him in the car. And Tommy straight away says, I want to shoot him in the face. I hate him so much. How dare he be so disrespectful? I'm going to shoot him in his big face. And the other guys convince him, no, he's dead. We don't have to do this. Until we get back to that first scene, we hear the bumps. Or the first bumps. They then decide to go to Tommy's mother's house. And they have this real normal sort of conversation with her. Really trying to sort of reel her in, saying, oh, we're just working tonight, and we saw that we were passing by, we wanted to see you and all the rest of it. And they have lunch. They have, a meal together with Tommy's elderly mother while she's telling stories. And she takes out this picture of this fisherman with 2 dogs. And he looks like Billy Bats. And as soon as they realise that he does, they burst out laughing, knowing that they've probably killed him. And they're definitely going to get rid of him in the next hour or so. But the absolute switch to maniac mode, the fact that they can see this not only as a normal thing, but as a humorous thing. They've murdered a guy, they've got him in the trunk, and because this painting looks like him, it's funny. And you just look at it and go, that's completely sociopathic. But that is Scorsese's point. That's the thing he wants to drive home. These guys can be all these things, can be loving, charming friends, but they're all sociopathic murderers too. And you can't get away from that at any point. These people are people that are willing to kill at all times if it serves their own interest. Now the next moment, they get a cleaver out from Tommy's mum's, which is why they originally went there. They wanted something to knife him with and to finish the job. So they leave Tommy's mother's house and we go back to the scene that we saw at the beginning with the knife, with the gun, and putting Billy in the hole. Next thing, we are at a mafia family dinner. And Paulie is talking to Henry, saying, do you know about the thing? And Henry sort of says, is it the thing from upstate? Is it the thing from down here? And they finally come round to, it's Billy Bats. He's gone missing and people are looking for him. And Henry lies to Paulie and says, I don't know where he is. And whether Paulie believes him or not, he just says, make sure you keep looking because the guys are really on to me about this. I need him found, however it happens. And then the next second, Jimmy goes up to Henry and says, look, we need to move that body. They're making houses out of the plot of land that we put him in, so he's got to be moved. And then you see the real sort of the cost of their actions, the grotesqueness. They've had to dig him up, and obviously they've got the smells, they've got the sounds, they've got everything from a decomposing body. Now, Scorsese never shows this. All you see is the characters in shadow digging and Henry throwing up. And at this point, they're even still joking about it. They're joking about Henry throwing up as a sign of weakness. We're doing this and we're fine. You need to toughen up. And they bury him again, and supposedly that's the end of the story. Now we go on to the bits of the story that do affect Karen. We now start talking about Henry's adultery, because he says that in his world, there are two types of women. There are your wives and there are your girlfriends. There's always two, there's never just one. And we get introduced to his girlfriend, Janice, and we see all three of our main protagonists partying with their girlfriends. And even now, you need to see the intensity and the closeness to danger and the flat out racism that's prevalent here. Because Tommy's girlfriend says Sammy Davis Jr. is so talented, and Tommy takes that as an affront. Are you saying that you'd sleep with Sammy Davis Jr.? And she has to very quickly sort of backtrack and go, no, I'm just saying he's talented. Now, I use this as an example because the fact is, even at their most charming, if offended, you are going to end up with this nasty, horrible reaction, and you've got to play it very carefully or you're going to end up dead. I think this menace and this real tension throughout really makes it a solid, wonderfully crafted movie. A lot of people said there's glorification here, but I would say the absolute opposite. He's showing these people for who they are. They're loose cannons. They're all sorts of things, but you find them fascinating. The same way people find serial killers fascinating. It's not that you find them likeable people or charming or anything else. It's that they can be these things. They can flatter to deceive. And, we all fall for it. And we're all sort of fascinated by the macabre of it. But anyway, as we go on to Henry's mistress, everyone knows that he's cheating. It's an open secret. And, because everyone else is doing it, no one sort of pulls him up on it until his wife actually finds out who the woman is and confronts her and confronts him. Now, Karen, as I've said earlier on, she's absolutely fine with everything Henry does until it affects her world. And this is where you start to see Karen disintegrate, because the other guys may cheat on their wives, but not her. She's special. She's above the other wives. They may have to put up with that sort of stuff, but she doesn't. Because Henry loves her and he knows where his bread is buttered. Until that mirror is smashed to pieces. She knows he's playing away, and she even knows where the girl lives. So she takes the kids to this woman's apartment and screams down the alarm system to every single flat in the apartment, saying that this woman is sleeping with my husband. She's nothing but to use their terminology, nothing but a whore. And she screams this and screams this and screams this incessantly throughout that bit of the film. Now, the next bit is even more fascinating because Henry's asleep. He's on the bed. He's completely oblivious as to what Karen's done. And the first thing we see of Henry, and it's from his first person perspective, is Karen on top of him with a loaded gun in his face. And you see him charm her and calm her down. I wouldn't hurt you. I love you. Nothing else in my life matters but you. Honestly, just put the gun down, sweetheart. Just put it down. Everything's going to be okay. And she even admits she can't say anything. She can't do anything because she loves him. She's threatening to kill him, but she can't because that dependency, that codependency is so much. She can't bear to hurt him. And as soon as she lowers the gun, smack, straight across the face, Henry's violent side comes straight out. How dare you have a gun at my face? I have to deal with this every day at work. I do not need this from you. And he gets her to apologise. He's committed domestic assault on her, but for some reason she's still convinced that he's doing it out of love for her. She's screaming, I'm sorry, please don't go. I'm sorry. The kids are screaming. Henry doesn't care. He walks out the door. He's done. And then a few weeks pass by. Turns out he's with Janice. But Jimmy and Paulie go to see him and say, look, Karen's saying crazy stuff and you need to make it right with her. And they do it from a view of, we're family men. We need to keep up appearances. And that's what's important. And this is what I mean about the inner monologues telling the truth. Because Paulie and Jimmy aren't concerned about the state of Henry's marriage. They're concerned that Karen's wild. She could go to the police. She could go to the FBI. She could tell all the secrets, all the pillow talk that they've ever said. And that's why they're worried. And they tell him he's got to go home. But before he goes home, have a little trip with Jimmy. We need a guy roughing up for a gambling debt down in Florida, but I need you to go down and take care of it. You know, have a couple of days in the sun and go to the casinos, relax. It's a holiday. What Jimmy and Henry don't know is that the guy that they rough up, his sister works for the FBI and she tells everything. She hands in her brother, she hands in all the guys that beat her brother up, and they get 10 years inside. Now this is where the relationship changes, not only for Henry and Karen, but for Henry and his mob friends. Because part of it is that when he goes away, he no longer gets the support of the organisation from the outside. Now from the inside, absolutely. You know, he's shown living like a king with Paulie, who's in for another charge, and Jimmy's up in another prison somewhere. And, you know, he shows that they don't live like everyone else. They have a nice meal, and that they bribe the guard, and they can basically run the place however they want. But this is where he gets into the drug business. He meets some guys from Pittsburgh, and he gets Karen to regularly do drug runs for him in return for money when he gets out, and a recurring business when he gets out. Now Karen sees Janice's name on the visitors roster for Henry, and she screams in the middle of the audience, if I ever see her name on here again, I'm done. And she starts doling out these packets of cocaine and wine and all sorts of contraband. And Henry once again has to charm her and calm her down and say, look, it's over. I'll never see her again. I need you. Now, you could say this is a moment of clarity for Henry. He realises he needs Karen. But again, what does he need Karen for? Does he need Karen as his wife? As his partner? No, he needs her as his drug mule. She needs her to keep bringing the stuff in so that he has money coming in. So it's this really dangerous dichotomy of, you know, there's a use for you, so I need to keep you around and I'll do whatever it takes until you're no longer fit for my purpose. Now, as we go on, we see Henry continue to do the drug deals after a stern warning from Paulie saying that one of the people he knows high up the chain got 20 years because someone under him was dealing drugs behind his back. He doesn't want to be that person. He knows he did it on the inside, but now you've got to stop it. And Henry gives him all the platitudes and everything he needs to hear while continuing to do the job. He even brags it gets so big that he has to bring Jimmy and Tommy in to help him to practically do the job for him. And it's a running theme, and this is the start of the downfall, because he's starting to get lazy. And this is as he starts partaking in the drugs, he gets lazy, he gets paranoid. All the things that are related with drugs start happening to Henry really slowly. Now although that's for the final act, that's for the absolute later scenes. But for now, what we're going to talk about is the biggest heist of them all, the Lufthansa heist of 1983. Now, this is a real heist which is still unsolved, even though the people involved have already admitted that they did it. But what you see now is the breakdown of the friendly veneer of the mafia, because this job is so big. It starts with the guy who was being beaten up by Jimmy earlier on over a gambling debt, a guy called Morey. He's brought the information on, and a crew's been brought together to do this heist. And Morey is a real nagging character. He's opportunistic, but he doesn't understand how everything works, and he doesn't know that he's been used. He's never going to see a penny of that money. But he keeps annoying them, which keeps bringing him into a real risk area. And he doesn't understand that right up until later on in the film. But to speed the review along, essentially what happens is they pull off the heist. Everyone involved is told to keep their heads down and make sure that the cops don't know anything. And the first thing that happens is one of the guys has a mink coat and a pink Cadillac. Jimmy has all the money. He's squirreled it away. He says he's keeping it safe for him, Henry and Tommy. They're the only people who are going to profit from this. But he sees the guy and says, "What the F are you doing? Get that stuff off, get it out of here." And that's the first mistake and the real crack with Jimmy. Jimmy starts getting paranoid because he knows there's a lot of attention on him, because this was one of the biggest heists in history. And he's determined that he's going to profit, not anybody else. It's all about him. The veneer is completely off. He just cares about him. And then we go to a really minor but quite fun role. It's an early Samuel L. Jackson role. His role in the heist was that he was a guy who hanged around the bar and they really liked, and they had him as the getaway driver. Now his job was to take the van full of the money to a place. Once that money was dropped off, then get the van scrapped. He took the van to the place, but then decided to get high and didn't scrap the van. The police find the van. And that's it. Two of the guys who did the heist with him come in and say, "Aren't you supposed to be joining us for something?" The next minute, you know, bang, bang, 2 shots, down goes Samuel L. Jackson. And this is the beginning of the unwinding of all these people who were involved in the heist. Nobody can trust anybody at this point. Everybody's up for debate and up for discussion. And as things go on, you find out that Jimmy's cut everybody loose. There are bodies being found all over the city in all sorts of different ways. And then we see Morey. Morey goes to Jimmy again asking for money regarding the heist, and Jimmy's like, yeah, you'll get it tomorrow, you'll get it another day, calm down, we'll sort it. And he gets some guys to get Morey and his wife to their car. And Morey and his wife get in, but so do the gangsters. And the next thing you know, knives are going through the skull of both Morey and his wife. Another loose end has been cleared up in terms of how Jimmy sees it. Nobody's left to challenge his authority. No one who really matters anyway. And so he sees it that him and Tommy and Henry are going to be the only beneficiaries, and Henry and Tommy are only going to get the absolute bare minimum. Now, as we go on, the next big high spot, but also low spot for the protagonist is Tommy is going to be a made man. Now, because Henry and Jimmy have Irish blood, they can't join the mafia. You have to have pure Italian blood to be made. So, as far as they're concerned, this is their in. Tommy's their in, and they're going to progress up the chain because of Tommy. What they don't know is that it's all a setup. Tommy's about to be killed. And you see him get shot to the face, and the phone call comes in, and it's, did he get made? Has everything happened? And all they get is, he's gone. And then Henry later describes that it happened because of the Billy Bats thing. Somebody found out and he's dead. Now we're getting into our real final act, our real ending. Henry's completely lost his mind. Now this is the bit of the story where I have a bit of a critique. It feels very claustrophobic, very closed in, and very rushed. But I can see there's a point to it, because the point is that Scorsese wants you to feel all those things, because that's how Henry's feeling. He's feeling closed in. He's feeling paranoid. He's feeling chased because he's a drug addict. He's no longer reliable. He's no longer able to do the things he used to do. And you need to feel that all the way throughout. You've got a scene of him making dinner with his younger brother and him taking his brother to the hospital. And all you can see is a helicopter above. Now that is supposed to be an innocuous thing. It's a helicopter. There's no reason for that to be following you. But he's paranoid. He's completely out of it at this stage. He truly believes that helicopter is following him. And he sort of goes around town and does his jobs and does everything he can, because he's supposed to be doing a delivery of drugs this afternoon. And, the people who do his muling are all set and ready to go. And, but the crux of it is, the paranoia is justified. We find out that it's not just Henry being paranoid, claustrophobic. He really is being followed. There's a chopper following him all day. His phones have been tapped. This is endgame. And the change from Act 1 and 2, where there's this glamorous, laid-back, charming guy, to this real sort of dependent, shaky, paranoid guy who can't string a sentence together, never mind think of elaborate plans. He's finally going to get his comeuppance as he goes round. Now, in the story, we get to know that his phones have been tapped, and it's an absolute done deal. He's going to jail. Next thing is, what about Jimmy? Jimmy just cares about himself. So he tries to contact Karen and say, I want to help, I want to go through his case, we're going to get him the best solicitors, all this stuff. And then Jimmy says, in an innocuous but intimidating way, I've got a gift for you down the alley. Just follow me down here. I've got some nice dresses, you can look nice, it's all going to be good. But Karen knows that something's off. There's something off in Jimmy's demeanour. And there is, because De Niro handles it in it's such a clever way from such an artistic actor. He's very calm, but you can tell there's a threat. Just go down there. He's egging her on down this road, and we just get to see a split shot of an empty alley and two guys waiting. Now, we know what would have happened if she'd have gone down that alley. She'd have been killed because she knows something. She's been in on the drug deals with Henry all along. She's another loose end for Jimmy to tie up. Henry's another loose end for Jimmy to tie up. And that's when Henry and his family get really spooked, because they know that if they don't cooperate, they're going to end up dead. That was an early warning and a lucky escape. And then we get to the part of Henry holding court in court. This is him describing his life, and he's doing it to us as an audience. He's been doing it the whole way through his monologues, but now he's breaking the fourth wall. He's with us. He's telling us exactly what they did. They murdered, they stole, they bet. They had city properties all over the city. They had judges, they had police. Everything is being done to you through the fourth wall. It's being spoken right to your face. And there's a moment of complete dejection in Ray Liotta's face. He knows it's over. He knows everything that he ever loved about the life he had, the luxury. It's all gone now. And he's done the one thing he was told right at the very beginning to not do. Don't rat on your friends and don't speak to the police. And he's done it all. And he knows that he's either going to die of old age and in complete anonymity, which is exactly what he doesn't want. He wants to be special. He always wanted to be special, right from those early days. You know, he wanted to be different from the other kids. He wanted to be different from the other guys in the neighbourhood. He was special. He wanted to be the celebrity. So for him, that's a death. Straight away, you might as well have killed him in terms of his personality. He's gone right there just by no longer being associated with these people. And he's betrayed the people who in his eyes loved him, even though we can look at it and say, you know, they didn't love him. You know, they wanted what they could get from him. Everyone was out for themselves, but they all had this veneer of, we love you, we're a family, anything, we do it together. But that's all gone now, and all they seem for is a loose end. It's something to be tied up with. And then you get a shot of Henry living his normal life, and he starts talking about how he's a regular guy. He has to queue up for things like regular people. When he wants nice food, he can't get it because he has to go to normal restaurants that don't suit his taste. And he picks up this paper and looks right down the barrel at the camera and goes, I'm just a schlub, I'm just like everybody else, but this is how I'm safe. And then the final shot, it's Tommy with a gun, and he blasts straight down the camera. And for me, that is essentially the visual aid of Henry being killed. He's not actually been killed, but spiritually, his whole demeanour, his whole way of life has been killed. It's been shot point blank. So Tommy's shooting at Henry and at the audience. This is all over. This story is finished. Now, how do we go about reviewing the film as a whole? I've talked a lot about sort of persuasion and reality because it's so important to understanding the characters' drivers. You've got the realities of these violent people, but you've got the trappings, and it's for the audience to understand. It's for the audience to have a visual aid of, if you were given all this, if you see these beautiful shots and these beautiful things and have all your friends involved with it, wouldn't that be amazing? And, you know, if it was a legal thing to do, then most people would say yes, absolutely. I'd love to have millions to spend. I'd love to be able to do all the nicest things and have all my friends come with me, and we all do good and we all make good. And that's what Scorsese is selling. He's selling that in the first act. He wants you to want that life. He wants you to understand these characters' motivations. But the first shot is key, because that's the reality. Any one of them can be killed at any point, at any time, by any of them, because the only thing they're interested in is themselves. That's it. That's the whole thing. What can I get today? How much can I get today? And I don't care who I have to step over. It's about me surviving. Now in the exit crawl, you get to see the actual fates of people. You see that Henry and Karen divorced. Jimmy's not going to get out of prison till 2009, and considering that this film was shot in 1990, you sort of, and the actual prosecutions happened in sometime in sort of 85, 87, you get a sense of time and scale. You find out that Paulie died in prison. The exact thing he told Henry he didn't want to do, he died in prison. So you're seeing the realities, the culpabilities of the actions. So in my eyes, Scorsese doesn't glamorise anything in his films. He gives you visual and audio understanding of why somebody would find this life so appealing, so enamouring, and then the cost. What have these people actually ended up with? A lot of them ended up in prison, and a lot of them ended up with nothing. Now, if you go into what actually happened to Henry Hill after Goodfellas, he got some notoriety from the film, but he lived in relative obscurity and in relative poverty. You know, there were talks of hits on him for years after the film was released. He ended up dying of natural causes back in 2013. But imagine having that constant look over your shoulder that someone could come with a gun at you at any time. Your family, your children, everything has been gone. Everything's gone. You've lost it all. And for what? Because he would probably say because he couldn't control his addictions. But he couldn't control any of his life. All of it was so dependent on being blinded by the trappings of what they had. It was never going to last. It never does. You know, you look at some of the granular bits of everyday sort of gangsters who do tell their stories in documentaries like this. They all say they lost it somewhere or another, be it by drugs or drink or gambling. Because money was nothing, they could always go get some more, right until the day that they couldn't. Now, the interesting thing about Goodfellas, and the thing that makes it different from the likes of The Godfather and other things, is that you are looking at a life from a real low level. This is not, you're not The Godfather, you're not the be-all and end-all of an organisation. You're not looking at the higher workings of an organisation, even in a fantasy level. You are down and dirty with the lower echelons of the business. The people who are the big people don't see as important, but they're still millionaires. They still make this obscene amount of money, while being, you know, in the grand scheme of things, quite small and quite quite replaceable in all throughout all of this. They're just characters, they're people to be expunged, and they're people who can be easily replaced by someone young, hungry, who wants that wealth and that lifestyle. To the greater mafia are a tenner penny. And I think that's an important distinction to make here. These guys weren't your high thinkers. They weren't the top of the organisation. They weren't isolated by layers upon layers of, you know, other cover of other people. They were really sort of down in the food chain. And these are the sort of people that the FBI can get to get bigger fish. And that's exactly what they did to Henry, and what they probably do on a regular basis in terms of other criminal cases. So it's a real important distinction to say, you know, that these stories are to be told, because these are the sort of people that law enforcement get. And this is the everyday life of someone in that sort of life. Money is very quick. lifestyle is very quick, but it moves so quickly as well. Through all these different vices, through all these different connections. It's here today, gone tomorrow, very irreplaceable. And I think that's Scorsese's genius. Because he's not looking at the bigger upper echelons of the mafia, and he's looking at this lower level, he's telling you that, look, this can look so glamorous, so idyllic from one perspective, but you understand what you sign up for the minute you do this. And once you're in this life, you're a ticking time bomb at that level. You know, it's not going to last forever. Someone is either going to kill you or you're going to end up in prison. So all the people who've said that Scorsese glamorises his villains, I don't think he does. I think all he does is try to layer them, to give them empathy, to show the audience that this could so easily be you guys if you didn't have that moral compass and that will to do things properly. It's so easily to be led astray by the high life, by a life that we would all love. And to be fair, there are some fairly high up people, you know, white collar criminals who get away with this every day. But because these guys are not those sort of people, they have not come from those sort of backgrounds, they are expendable. They are something else. And I think Scorsese does have some sympathy for them. But he's not glamorising them. He's telling them as a cautionary tale. All Scorsese's stories tend to be cautionary tales. These are not meant to be admired or revered. You're just impressed by the trappings, which anybody would be. If you win the lottery, you would be enamoured by your new trappings. It's just that the way they got it was legal, and it's going to be a limiting factor for them from a lifestyle point of view. And he does have sympathy for that bit because it's a loss of life. And essentially, we should all be empathetic towards losses of life. No one should say, you know, oh, well, he did this thing, so he deserves it. No one should think like that. But it's for us, it's for the audience to make our judgments. And he very craftily weaves his story in and out from opulence to threat to action. And the way it's woven into an understandable story for us as an audience to empathise with and to take in, that's the bit that really holds. You can go on about the technical bits in terms of how it's shot. You know, the Steadicam's gorgeous. Some of the narration options wouldn't be most people's choices, but in Scorsese's hands, they just work because he understood the story, he understood the script, and he understood how he was going to get people in. He was going to hook them the same way the mafia hooked Henry, with opulence, with excess, with all these other things, and then he was going to show them the reality. And for me, that is a perfect way of storytelling. Now, you guys give me feedback on how you thought this went. You know, it's all long form, and you know, you can sort of direct me as to how you want me to break stuff down. Is it in a long form like this? Is it something shorter? Do you want me to focus more on technical bits or storytelling or anything else? I'm here for you guys, and you know, we'll look at other things. I think the next thing will be something that let's just say I don't like, just so we have a contrast, a bit of yin and yang for the next bit. But until then, guys, I'm the Wobbly Geek, signing out. Love to all of you. See you later.